there was a time when Mao told Nehru that, okay, you have Dalai Lama, keep him there with you. Let him live for 100 years. We don't care. He said it. It's on record. And now Dalai Lama is going to be 100 in 10 years. And the way you see the helplessness of the Chinese system, the way Xi Jinping goes practically mad while talking about Dalai Lama, that shows they are feeling very helpless before this monk statesman who has no gun, who doesn't who doesn't even shout at them.
Hello, this is Strat News Global. You're on The Gist, and I'm Tripti Nath. I'm very pleased to welcome in our studio again today, after a gap of 6 months, Mr. Vijay Kranti, who's a well-known Tibetologist, journalist, and photographer who met the Dalai Lama the first time way back in 1972 and has been in touch with him for almost 53 years. In his quest for knowledge on Tibet, the Dalai Lama, and Tibetan issues, Mr. Kranti has traveled to Tibet 3 times. He's documented the social, political, and religious life of Tibetans in Tibet and also in exile. He's also issued many interesting articles on the Tibetan issue and has studied the issue of Tibetan self-immolations, which are 159 so far officially. Our guest today, I must tell you, has the largest one-man collection of Tibetan photographs which have been exhibited all over the world. So let me begin by drawing your attention, Mr. Kranti, to this book, Voice for the Voiceless, which has been authored by none other than the Dalai Lama, who's a well-known global figure, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, as all of us know, and who was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1989. So this book has been published by HarperCollins and available exclusively in the Indian subcontinent. And it covers what the Dalai Lama says here, over 7 decades of struggle with China for my land and my people. Sure, you've seen the book. It's creating quite a stir in India. I mean, people
it's
are
in the news these days.
Right.
Much, yeah.
So, how timely is this book coming as it does around the Tibetan Uprising Day on March 10, close to the March 17 anniversary of the Dalai Lama's escape from Norbolinka Palace, and not too far from his 90th birthday on July 6?
Yeah, surely this book is, I would say, quite timely, and to me it appears that it is a well calculated timing, as you already mentioned. So it's so close to the anniversary of the Tibetan uprising, his escape, and then on July 6th this year, he will be 90.
Right.
Which is going to be historical because we are expecting some major announcements from him. And this I see, if I'm not wrong, this is his 3rd autobiography. The very first one was My Land, My People. That was in 60s. And then the second one was Freedom in Exile, which has been in circulation in a really big manner. And now we see the 3rd. So the timing in that sense is important, that Tibet is going to cross a milestone, especially in July. I am expecting, or many of us are expecting, when Dalai Lama makes a very specific announcement about his reincarnation.
All right, we'll come to that.
Yeah, so I think this book is very timely.
Okay, so the book has created quite a stir, as I said, as the Dalai Lama has raised the million-dollar question on reincarnation by asserting that since the purpose of reincarnation is to carry on the work of the predecessor, the new Dalai Lama will be born in the free world, so that the traditional mission of the Dalai Lama, that is to be the voice for universal compassion, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, and the symbol of Tibet embodying the aspirations of the Tibetan people will continue, quote unquote. How do you interpret his remarks, which are bound to make the Chinese sit up and take notice?
This statement, I would say, although it is not a new one, he has said many parts of it so many times. But putting everything together, and making his purpose more clear. Because there have been occasions in last few decades when his supporters got a bit confused when he said that he is ready not to ask for freedom, independence for Tibet, and he is ready to negotiate with China provided they give what he calls genuine autonomy to the Tibetan people.
He keeps the Chinese guessing with the smart remarks.
That way he is smart, and I must say that many people think that he is just a monk. He is a great monk statesman,
Right.
and his timing of announcements, making statements, taking decisions is remarkable. And this statement makes a few things more clear than it was, because many of his supporters, as I said, were unhappy that he suddenly looked like giving up the cause of free Tibet, independent Tibet. But now it seems that he has already tried with China. He gave them enough time
Right.
by offering that, okay, I'm ready to accept genuine autonomy. And now his tone, I see, is different, is more
Assertive.
decisive, assertive, because perhaps he has realized that his offer made no impact on the Chinese, and the Chinese have rather been going far ahead in what he has been fearing, the destruction of Tibetan identity, cultural genocide, denial of human rights to the Tibetan people. So I think this is a clearer, I would say, statement from Dalai Lama.
Mr. Kranti, let's go back to what the Dalai Lama said in the summer of 2024. While talking to some media persons in Dharamsala, he said, "I'm not thinking of reincarnation." At that time, the Chinese embassy spokesperson in New Delhi put out a post saying, "Reincarnation of living Buddhas," and I'm quoting, "as a unique institution of inheritance in Tibetan Buddhism comes with a set range of rituals and conventions. The reincarnation system is protected by such legal instruments as regulations on religious affairs and measures on the management of the reincarnation of living Buddhas." The spokesperson went on to say that the institution of reincarnation of the Dalai Lama has been in existence for several hundred years. They further reminded the Dalai Lama that the 14th Dalai Lama himself was found and recognized following religious rituals and historical conventions, and his succession was approved by the then central government. Therefore, reincarnation of living Buddhas, including the Dalai Lama, must comply with Chinese laws and regulations and follow religious rituals and historical conventions. So they may just flag the same thing again.
Sorry to laugh it away, this statement, but unfortunately, this statement of Chinese government, because Chinese embassy represents Chinese government in India, it's really laughable. I could never understand why a system, a communist party run government, one who has so much deep faith and history of Mao announcing that religion is opium of masses, and his policy throughout, as long as he lived, was that if you knock out religion out of the heart and mind of a Tibetan people, then what you will get is a patriotic Chinese. So this drove him to destroy Tibetan identity, Tibetan culture, Tibetan people's faith in Buddhism and their faith in Dalai Lama. So enormously that in the world you don't have any other example. I don't know if you can compare it with what happened in Germany to the Jews, but it was no less. So now the same party leaders, same government, announcing that there is a system of reincarnation which governs the reincarnation of Dalai Lama and other tulkus or reincarnate lamas. It's laughable. They don't believe in religion. Marxism outrightly rejects the idea of a past life or next life.
Right.
And now they have made a law. Can you believe that the Communist Party of China in 2007, they came out with a law. The title of that law is Order Number 5, which says that no incarnate Lama, including the Dalai Lama, has any right to take birth without the permission of Communist Party of China. And that too permission, according to that law which they made, a Lama who has to reincarnate, has to take new birth, must have in advance a certified stamped paper permission of the Communist Party of China before taking birth.
So it's as bizarre as saying that they're bigger than God, right?
It's laughable. And if Chinese embassy makes such a claim, I would not be surprised. I will be amused.
The Dalai Lama has said in this book that it is really for the Tibetans to decide whether they want the institution of Dalai Lama to continue. And I would like to quote from this book. He says, people have often asked me if there will be a next Dalai Lama. Then he goes on to say, I issued a formal statement in which I stated that when I turn 90, I will consult the high lamas of the Tibetan religious traditions as well as the Tibetan people. And if there is a consensus that the Dalai Lama institution should continue, then formal responsibility for the recognition of the 15th Dalai Lama should rest with the Gaden Fordring Trust, the office of the Dalai Lama. But before his 90th birthday, he's dropped this bombshell.
Yeah, you can call it bombshell, but he made a very clear announcement. And again, he keeps the Chinese guessing.
It's a bombshell for the Chinese, right?
Yeah, he keeps them guessing. So so far he has not been giving them a very specific answer so that they could devise their own strategy. So when he gave this statement, his 90th birthday was still away. And in the year when that was 2011, when he made a very clear announcement about the future of the institution of Dalai Lama, and he put it on record, he was still 14 years away from his 90th birthday. And at that time also he had said that he will consult the senior monks and the people of Tibet about it. So here now it becomes meaningful. That's why in the very beginning I mentioned that this book is very timely because his 90th birthday is approaching and we should expect a statement from him. But just now I would like to add one more point.
Sure.
When you read the statement of the Chinese ambassador in New Delhi, that the
Spokesperson.
the 14th Dalai Lama was recognized or certified by the Chinese government, there can't be something more funny and false. It's all propaganda. When Dalai Lama was acknowledged as Dalai Lama, he was 5 years old.
Right.
And there was a ceremony in Lhasa. And that ceremony was attended by hundreds of people from abroad, including some diplomats from different countries, including from India, and some photographers from around the world.
It had global legitimacy.
Yeah, it was. And there the Chinese representative was one of so many guests. So today, rewriting the history and claiming that it was the Chinese representative who presided over that function, and it was the Beijing government which certified Dalai Lama's, 14th Dalai Lama's enthronement. It shows that Chinese are miserable. They rewrite a history. They know it is a lie. And the worst thing with Marxists also, they create untruth things. For propaganda, they rewrite history, and very soon they start believing it. And that is why they suffer. And exactly here, Chinese government rewrites history, tries to fortify some falsehoods, and unfortunately, they themselves start believing in it.
So the Dalai Lama has also emphasized that Tibetans in the free world have moral responsibility to continue to speak on behalf of their brothers and sisters inside Tibet, and he has said that doing so is neither anti-China nor splittist.
I would tell you, I will look at this statement from other side. He is talking about the exiled Tibetans who are living in free world, who are living in India, who are in America, Canada, New Zealand, Britain, Germany, where they are speaking up
Sure.
very loudly about their cause. I am telling you with my personal experience of traveling more than 5,000 kilometers on land inside 5 provinces of China,
Wow.
in which China, after occupying Tibet, China broke it into pieces, and 2/3 of the original Tibet it threw into adjoining provinces of Yunnan, Sichuan, Qinghai, Gansu, and the 5th part was left as TAR, Tibet Autonomous Region. I have traveled to all these 5 areas just to see how the Tibetans live under Chinese occupation. I have tons of photographs,
Right.
whatever a tourist can do it. And I studied it. I can tell you the voice of Tibetans living outside Tibet in the free world. Compare it with the voice which people are expressing inside under Chinese occupation. The Tibetans living inside Tibet, their voice is much stronger and much determined. They don't, now they have stopped shouting slogans or holding public demonstrations like they did in as recently as in 2008 Olympics. They did it in a very, very big way.
Right.
54 places there were demonstrations against China. But now they are saying it in a different way. They express it in so many ways. And just one example is the Chinese government installed a Panchen Lama of their choice.
Right.
Yeah, and arrested the real one, and we still don't know the
His
fate of that
whereabouts.
child and his family. But the Tibetans have refused to accept this Sarkari, the government-sponsored Panchen Lama. And the Chinese government, even today, has to pay money to the people to go and sit in his congregations. Yeah, they are paid. So this shows the resistance inside Tibet is very strong against China.
So, do you think that the Dalai Lama will be able to return to his homeland in his lifetime? He has said that he will live up to 113 or something, which is an expression of his confidence that he's certainly around on the planet for over 2 decades more. So, he says in this book, it is my sincere hope that Beijing will find the necessary courage to resolve the long-standing issue of Tibet through peaceful means before it is too late.
The other side of this story is, of course, Dalai Lama as a monk has that, I think, spiritual powers to live long or at least decide about his own lifetime. This may be factually correct or not, but this is what the Tibetan people and the system believes in it. So when Dalai Lama says that he will live up to 113 years, he is, in my opinion, he is actually throwing challenge to the Chinese. Because what happened, there was a time when Mao told Nehru that, okay, you have Dalai Lama, keep him there with you, let him live for 100 years. We don't care. He said it. It's on record. And now Dalai Lama is going to be 100 in 10 years. And the way you see the helplessness of the Chinese system, the way Xi Jinping goes practically mad by talking about Dalai Lama, that shows they are feeling very helpless before this monk statesman who has no gun, who doesn't who doesn't even shout at them. So I think China is, this is a kind of statement which is, in a way confronting China. And I remember one very interesting story of Bangla. It is called Bancharamer Badi. And in short, the story is, there is a landlord.
What does that mean, please? Bancharim?
Bancharamer Badi means the small garden of Bancharam, who is a very poor, very small farmer who refused to sell his land so that he could otherwise, he has already bought land from everybody else. So now it is a huge land and there is a small island which belongs to Bancharam. So now finally when he refuses to sell it, then the Zamidar thinks, Okay, let him die, he is poor man, he will die and then land will be mine. The end result is the landlord dies before him. And the story says that they see a snake running around in the garden. So this is going to happen with Chinese Communist Party. I have a friend Xinjin, who is a very famous author and a democrat fighter of China, lives in Australia.
Wow.
So he and his friends have so many times quoted that Xi Jinping and Communist Party will vanish very soon, and Tibetan struggle will outlive, their life. So I think Dalai Lama has hopes when he talks of 113. He is reassuring himself, his followers, his friends across the world that he is going to fight.
Okay, Tibetans have been living in exile in India since 1959, and their numbers are now growing, and it's exceeded 1.10 lakh. Apart from New Delhi, Dharamsala is their abode, of course, where the Dalai Lama lives. They are spread all over in many settlements in Karnataka,
countries, yeah.
Maharashtra, Delhi, Uttarakhand. They have succeeded in preserving their identity, culture and tradition, and the Dalai Lama in this book has described how they've re-established many of the historically important cultural and religious institutions of Tibet. Not just this, the Dalai Lama has also succeeded in keeping his flock together for so many years. That's not something, and with successive governments of across party lines, he's had excellent relations with
This is a great...
with all politicians
This is a
of all shades.
very unique thing about Dalai Lama. I have seen so many diplomats, so many statesmen, so many political leaders across the world in my over 50 years of journalism career. But I have never seen a person who has practically nothing behind him to support him. The total number of Tibetans living inside Tibet is 6 million. Compare it with the Chinese. The Tibetans living outside in exile are about 150,000, very close to that. And out of that, about 80,000 are living in India. Rest are spread in, I think, 26 or 27 countries across the world. But in this period, the Dalai Lama's leadership, his vision, has shown wonderful results. He has, with the help of same handful of people, imagine refugees who have lost their home, lost family members, just nothing. They didn't have even the language and skills to earn their next bread in exile when they came. And it is same Tibetans who have recreated some of the best Buddhist institutions outside Tibet. And it is because of Dalai Lama's leadership and vision that India has become, over last 70 years, the largest reservoir of genuine Tibetan and Buddhist culture because of Dalai Lama and the Tibetans. So this is success of Dalai Lama's leadership, that he could extract the best of results from a worst of situation, where even his people, as I explained, were practically so helpless.
So, Mr. Kranti, I noticed in this book some very interesting aspects of his philosophy. Not only has he advised the fellow Tibetans to sustain determination in the face of situations that seem daunting, he has even urged them to guard against hatred towards the Chinese.
Well, yes. One thing, the strength of Dalai Lama is his faith in non-violence. Here is a man who has used non-violence as one of the most effective weapons in his fight against the most powerful enemy, from a position where he is least powerful. Once I was talking to him and we were discussing about anger. And he told me, do you know, anger is our worst enemy. When we are fighting, then if we are angry, then our energy goes down and our chances of doing something strongly or winning are decreased. And then he made very interesting remark. He says, when you are fighting, then you should not be angry. I asked him, why? He says, if you are angry, you cannot hit with your full strength. So be cool and hit strong. Here I see, here is a man who is utilizing the power of being cool and non-violent against one of the strongest forces of the world today. So I think when he says, when he tells his people not to have hatred against the Chinese, here he means that if you hate, you lose your energies, you lose your focus. So don't hate Chinese, just understand their power and fight back.
So we're taking a quick break and we'll be back very soon.
Should I? मन में वो पायरेट्स ऑफ द कैरिबियन का म्यूजिक आ रहा है.
Rolling.
What I found very interesting, Mr. Kranti, is that in this book, the Dalai Lama has also said that the courage and spirit of the indefatigable Chinese pilgrims who traveled to India in search of the Buddhist texts and practice traditions has been a profound and continuing inspiration for him. Does that come as a surprise to you?
I think he is talking about the Tibetans in the history who have been coming to India as students.
No. He's talking of the Chinese pilgrims.
Yes. One interesting part of Buddhism going to China and Tibet is that when the Chinese scholars came to India and studied Buddhism, they went back and rewrote their own ideas in Chinese language. But when the Tibetans came from Tibet, lived here for ages, because it was a very long tradition of hundreds of years, they lived in institutions like Nalanda. Takshila.
Right.
And then they went back with the knowledge and teachings and many scripts in Sanskrit. And they translated all that in Tibetan. And a very interesting aspect, I was talking to Professor Samdung Rinpoche, one of the greatest scholars and a former prime minister. I was discussing with him about this process. And then he told me that at that time when Tibet was deciding, the king wanted to decide whether, because the text, Buddhist texts in Chinese were available at that time. And reaching to China was very comfortable for Tibetans because there is, compared to India, they had to go through Himalayas, which was very treacherous. And hundreds of scholars died on the way just because of the bad conditions and bandits and so many or diseases and snow biting, etc. But still, he decided that they will pick up the original Sanskrit texts to translate into Tibetan. And his reason was that if they translate it through Chinese, then it will be a second hand, a third hand kind of translation. So why not the Tibetan scholars learn Sanskrit, go to India, Indian scholars, they learn Tibetan, they come to Tibet, and then they together translate. So that is why you find that the Tibetan texts are very authentic. And it's a huge, stock of those texts and books. And luckily, one institute in Sarnath, the Tibetan Institute of Higher Studies, they have come out with some, those texts which India thought we had lost forever. And they have identified more than 100 such books which survived in Tibetan. They have retranslated them into Sanskrit. So one very interesting aspect of this translation business is that the translation between Sanskrit and Tibetan, the system was so scientific. Because in each translation, expert from Sanskrit and Tibetan both were involved in that committee, and the result was that the translations have come out quite original. And just chance that during this process, a couple of such books which were thought to be lost forever in Sanskrit were found out somewhere. And when they compared these translations with the old one, they discovered they were identical. So that simply shows, number one, the relation between Sanskrit and Tibetan, and second, the vision of Dalai Lama of creating institutions like Sarnath, that India got back so much of literature back, and his own countries, the Tibetan Buddhism has become richer by his presence in exile.
India is now home, as we know, to almost the third generation of Tibetan refugees. Do you think there's some kind of a fatigue setting in with the younger generation, or you think they're as passionate about the struggle as their parents and grandparents?
I don't think it's a fatigue, but definitely there is some change. For example, the very first generation, I have friends who were the first generation refugees in India. My first friends were from that group in 1972. And they were all young people.
Who came with the Dalai Lama.
Who came with Dalai Lama. And two of them, one of them became Prime Minister later, the other was Dalai Lama's representative in Washington, and who headed dialogue with China, Lodi Gyari and Sonam Togyal. So they were my friends, and their generation had its own energy, but they had disadvantage of language and what you call affinity with the outer world. But they performed very well within those limitations. And now it's the third generation of Tibetans who are differently abled, I would say, in the sense that they understand the outer world very well. They have technology of internet, communications. They have resources to see what is happening inside Tibet, what China is doing. So their number of very actively involved people may be not that big today, but the quality of that generation is wonderful. You see the quality of books they have produced, the quality of when you see them in webinars, when you see them in seminars, when you see them coming out with reports about the Tibetan situation, they have done remarkable work. So I don't see there is a fatigue. I only see the shape of expression, the modes of expression are now different, but that determination is prevalent.
So, my last question to you is from an appeal that he has issued by way of a chapter in this book, where he says that he tells the Tibetans to never lose hope, however dark the sky may become. I think this is very inspiring for everybody, not just for the Tibetans. And he says, as the Tibetan saying goes, if you fall 9 times, you get up 9 times. You know, this speaks volumes of his resilience. Yeah. And I'd like to quote from here. He says, some might think, given my age and communist China's position as a global power today, that time is not on our side. I disagree. Yes, the Dalai Lama institution today plays an important role in unifying Tibetans everywhere. But let us not forget that while the Dalai Lama institution is only 500 years old, Tibet's history is older by more than 1.5 millennium. So I have no doubt that our struggle for freedom will go on. I repeat, for it pertains to the fate of an ancient nation and its people. As an inherently unstable system, totalitarianism definitely does not have time on its side. Time is on the side of the people, Tibetans as well as Chinese, who aspire for freedom.
Yeah, this shows his, number one, the strength of his faith in his own belief in non-violence and persistence. You know, he is a man, as I said, when he came to India, he was just 25 years old, no experience of world politics. The people with him, they were hardly prepared for, not even for the next day meal. And still he has reached a place where he wins Nobel Prize. The Tibetans have reached a stage where they have now such influence right from the streets of Germany to the Parliament of America or European Union. They have so many friends. So it is their Dalai Lama's leadership and determination of Tibetans which gives them hope, and Dalai Lama has expressed that here. And one thing I would conclude, Tibet is not the only last colony of China. There are other colonies. For example, what China calls Xinjiang is originally Eastern Turkestan, East Turkestan. South Mongolia, which China calls Inner Mongolia, they are also colonies. Of course, Hong Kong is also there, but these two are colonies which were occupied in our presence, in our lifetime. So, they today aspire for a leader like Dalai Lama. I have met Rabia Kadir, I have met many friends, leaders of the democratic movement of China and leaders of South Mongolia. All of them, the democratic movement of China also today wish they had a leader like Dalai Lama. The East Turkestan Uyghurs wish they had a leader like Dalai Lama, and South Mongolians wish it. So that shows the success of Dalai Lama. So I would say that, you know, today we see a Dalai Lama who has lived his experiment very successfully.
So, Mr. Kranti, thank you very much. Let me express on behalf of Strat News Global deep gratitude to you for sharing your deep insight into the Tibetan struggle, telling us a little about where the future lies, and also sharing with us some interesting anecdotes and tidbits that you got from none other than the Dalai Lama that we would have never known. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.